Hello, my name is Edwin Goldberg, and I'm delighted to be the new rabbi at Congregation Beth Shalom of the Woodlands. Finding this gem of a congregation and community has been such a blessing. I'm so excited to be here. I'm moving here from Chicago, which is known for having the most beautiful spring of the year, both days. So, needless to say, we're very excited about the weather here in the Woodlands. But much more than that, the culture and the climate of friendliness and warmth is truly inspiring. I was a rabbi for the last 6 years in Chicago, and before that I spent 17 years in Coral Gables, Florida, which is a suburb of Miami. And part of what I enjoy about being a rabbi is getting to know the community, and the community is made up of individuals and getting to know each person. So really that's why I'm here, to be someone who can be called on when needed, someone who can teach, and of course someone who will learn from you as well. It's really an honor to be here. So I'm starting my rabbinate here in the Woodlands, and I'm moving from Chicago, which is affectionately known as Chiberia. Polar vortexes seem to be happening almost every day. And so moving here, I took out a summer suit, which I'm wearing, haven't worn in many years, and I just happened to put my hand in my pocket, and I pulled out a $100,000 bill, and then I looked again, and there was this winning lottery ticket, and a third time there was a key to a safe deposit box which has like $1 million in it. Now, of course, none of that's true, but I feel that way. I feel like a real blessed winner to be here. It really feels wonderful. But I also point this out because I want you to think for a moment, although everything I'm going to say in the next 30 seconds is not actually true, literally true. What if you got a call from me tomorrow and I said, "Hi, I'm your new rabbi. I found out that there is a legacy waiting for you. Someone, a relative, has left you the most priceless gift. You just have to come to the synagogue to get it." And you showed up, and I said, the relative is Moses, and the priceless gift is Jewish tradition. I'm not going to try that trick, but I want you to just think about it for a minute, because there is a priceless gift waiting for you here. It's not a gift I bring. It's a gift that is long time before me, but it's still so wonderful, and that is Jewish observance and wisdom and learning. And I invite you to join me as we worship together and learn together, because there is something very special about Judaism that can really enrich all of our lives, whether we're Jewish or not. And I'm so glad to be part of this family that can learn together and grow together. It's a wonderful blessing. My first love is being a congregational rabbi, as far as my calling goes, but I'm also an author of many books. And the reason why I wrote these books is because these were books that I wanted to read, and no one had written them yet. There were a lot of scholarly books, but not more popular books for all of us who just want to access part of the wisdom of Judaism. So my first book was called Midrash for Beginners. Midrash is interpretation of the Torah. It makes it more relevant, and that's why I wrote that. A second book was about understanding miniature stories of the ancient Talmud. Third book was about Jewish views of war and peace. I was asked to write that book, and I had hoped that by the time it was published, we'd no longer have any war, just peace. Sadly, as we know, that's not the case. And then I wrote a book called Love Tales from the Talmud, which are short miniature stories, how the rabbis express their very mature, I think, view of love and commitment. And all of this is in part because I was an English major who studied for my dissertation J.D. Salinger. So I love short, pithy stories. Then I wrote a book called Saying No and Letting Go, which is more of a psychological book trying to help us understand how saying no to many things in life allows us to say yes to the things that matter most, based on something I learned from the Kellogg School of Management, a nice little Zen koan, if you like, little pithy, kind of difficult statements, which is denial is the essence of strategy. In other words, it's only saying no that we can then find our dreams. A paradox, but I love paradoxes. And finally, I was helpful in creating the new holiday prayer book, and wrote a book about that for rabbis and cantors and lay leaders, because I wasn't satisfied with the holiday prayer book that we were using. And that's really the only reason why. If you complain about something, you'll probably find you get asked to do something about it. I'm working on a new book on Jewish views of God, and hopefully that will be published in the next year or so. I'm so blessed to have a wonderful family, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but I also have one rabbi that I know of in this country who was a family member, although I never got to meet him. He had actually been a senior rabbi in Chicago, in a suburb, back in the 1920s, and he left and came to Tyler, Texas, and he was in Tyler, Texas for a very long time. His name was Harvey Wessel, may he rest in peace. So as I was entering Texas and we passed near Tyler, I thought about my relative, and I'm delighted to be another relative of his who's moving from Chicago to Texas. Coming with me is my wonderful wife, Melanie Goldberg, who herself is a Jewish educator and personal stylist for men's clothing, and been very involved with many things such as development, and we're married now 32 years. I also have two boys, Joseph, who is 28, he's a math tutor in Chicago, and Benjamin, who is 25, and he works for PwC as a consultant in New York City, and hopefully they'll come to visit soon, and I know they'll fall in love with the Woodlands as we have. So many preschool kids that I've had always think that the rabbi lives at the synagogue, and sometimes it feels that way, but of course that's not the case. There's a lot of fun things I like to do outside of synagogue. I have a road bike, which I've already been riding on weekends here in the Woodlands, and I'm by far not the only one. It's a pretty crowded road. It's wonderful. I also like to play a little golf and tennis, and some intellectual enterprises or aspirations is the New York Times crossword puzzle and the Wall Street Journal crossword puzzle. I'm certainly balanced when it comes to crossword puzzles. I also enjoy a good cup of coffee and just hanging out at a Pete's Coffee or Starbucks or something like that. In general, Melanie and I both enjoy finding good places to eat, and we just like relaxed living that comes from being able to enjoy a good meal and company and good conversation. I also love reading literature, especially these days nonfiction books, and try to read about 3 or 4 books at the same time, and hopefully don't over talk about them, but I do like sharing what I'm learning with others as a way to connect and also to educate. And I also like learning what other people are reading. That's a great thing, and sometimes I read those books too, and I'm very grateful. So I like conversations of all kinds, and I hope we'll have many conversations, sacred and not profane, but sacred and ordinary together. Many years ago, when I was a rabbi in Miami, the Miami Herald called me and asked me a question. They said, "Rabbi, how come your synagogue is the only one that's growing in members at a time when people are losing members?" And I said, "I'm not sure why, but I can tell you this. Every day we show up with our A game." And that's important because a synagogue is not competing with another synagogue or a church. We're competing with Disney in the sense that people want a good experience when they come. So my focus is making sure that Congregation Beth Shalom of the Woodlands honors everyone's commitment of time, not to mention other resources, so that we're relevant, we're timely, we challenge you, and when we need to, we comfort you. So whether that means jiggling the schedule to make it more convenient for people, making sure that there's never a worship service that doesn't include a lot of right brain singing, but also something for the left side of the brain, taking advantage of every sacred time together to hopefully invite God's presence into our lives. It won't always work, but a guru of Judaism once said that spiritual moments can only happen by accident, but our job is to make ourselves more spiritually accident prone. So that's really what I see my initial goal, getting to know you, getting to know the culture of the congregation, but also ramping up the ability we have to connect to each other, to our own individual selves, and at times, really why we're here, to connect to that higher power we call God. If we can transform this congregation one person at a time, one event at a time in that way, then we'll be successful beyond anyone's dream. When you get to know me, you'll realize that I like allusions to pop culture. And one of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams. And at one point, someone says, "Is this heaven?" And the answer comes, "No, it's Iowa." So I've been feeling this way here at the Woodlands. It feels like heaven. Okay, so it's Texas. But I'm so happy to be here, and I look forward so much to our time in the future together. I feel really blessed. Thank you.